Teresita? Teresita, you need to press the talk button so we can hear you. We're not hearing anything from you. Okay, welcome everybody. If you haven't heard already, I've been having some technical problems. Although all of you were put into the system, so you wouldn't have to ask for permission to get into the system. A couple of you had that trouble. I had to manually enter you in. I'm not sure what's going on. My computer has frozen up a few times, and my setup was all cleared when you guys logged in, so I had to hurry up and get it done. So I apologize. Ben, yes, there is a handout. If you go to the right next to the chat box, there is a week in the life of a TPRSer handout. Click on that. And then at the bottom of that little window, click Save to My Computer. And if you don't have pop-ups blocked, another browser window will pop up with a link for you to download. It'll also be at the end of the webinar during our question and answer session. Okay, so hopefully we're not going to have any, at least I'm not going to have any more technical problems. I'll keep my fingers crossed. Just a couple things, because many of you, this is your first webinar. with me at least, so I want to go over a few things to make sure everybody knows how to work the system. First of all, if you haven't already done so, go to the top of your screen and click on your meeting button and manage my settings. Make sure your connection speed is set properly. And if you're having any trouble with the audio, use that audio wizard there as well. Most of you will use the DSL or cable selection. If you find that the speed is slowing down, then you might want to try the modem selection. Then I'm on a Mac too. I'm not sure what you see, what you don't see it. While he's typing in that, I'll continue here. If you want to talk and you have a microphone, if you click in the lower left-hand corner, there's a little guy with his hand raised. You can click that, and then I will turn on your microphone for you. A talk button, like a walkie-talkie, will come up, and you need to press that to actually talk and then release so we can talk back at you. Right next to that is a little arrow key, and they have some emoticons. Whether you agree with something, disagree with something, speak louder, speak softer, but express laughter or applause, you can click on those, and that will come up next to your name so we can see your emoticon that you've chosen to do. At any time, if any of the screens are too small for your window, there is a full screen button at the bottom of each window. Just click on that full screen, and then that will make the window the full screen of your browser. Carol's having trouble with the sound. Is anybody else having trouble with the sound? Okay, it may be Carol, your internet speed. You might want to go to that meeting menu and lower your connection so that it will send it to you at the right speed. If you have a lower connection, especially if you have like a broadband connection, but it's at the lower end, the 1.5 megahertz, the cheap one the lowest one that most people sell, you may have some trouble as we go along here. So if it starts to slow down for you, that's probably what the issue is. You may want to log out and log back in. That sometimes helps. Okay, here I am for the moment. I'm not going to broadcast my video the whole time because it does take up a lot of bandwidth, so it slows down for the people who are on slower connections. But I just wanted to show you that it's here. When I do broadcast, if for whatever reason the sound or something starts going slow for you, just hover over the video and two icons pop up, one for a microphone and one for a camera. If you click on the camera one, that will stop the camera and just let the sound come through, and that will make the connection a little bit better for you. Has anybody got any questions before we go ahead and get started here? And hopefully everything will work perfectly from here on out. It's up to you, Kathy, if you want to print it out. It's a really long handout, but save it on your computer is fine. You can print it out later. You don't need to refer to it during the webinar at all. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. Okay, we're going to talk about here a week in the life of a TPRSer, how to lesson plan that perfect week. As TPRSers, and as I noticed during the original poll, about half of us use it all the time, and about half of us use it about 60% of the time. So we've got a really mixed split here. So hopefully this will be useful for everybody in that range. As TPRSers, we don't have a nice and neat textbook package that plans our daily activities. If you ever worked in a textbook, you can open up to the beginning of the chapter and it tells you exactly what to do for the 2 weeks you're supposed to spend on that chapter. So if you need that help, it's there for you. It's not there for us in most of the TPRS books that any of us may use. So we have to muddle through and hope that we're doing the best for language acquisition. Over the past 10 years I've been using TPRS, I have found success with the activities and the lessons that I'll present to you today. Before we actually go into how to arrange it in the week, I wanted to give you all the different tools that I use in my classroom, the different activities that we can use to pull from for add variety and spice to our TPRS lesson plan. Thanks, Ben. And I'm going to go over a little bit of review because all of these are activities that we do, and some of the stuff is the straight TPRS stuff because that is part of our lesson plan. So I do have some brief review of that information here. So one of the activities obviously is the step one of TPRS, which is establishing the meaning, and we do that through TPR gestures and PQA. And just a quick review of TPR and gestures. Once you establish a gesture for a structure, you're going to model it for your students, and then they are going to repeat it back without the sound, just the actions. And then you're going to say the words and the structures, and you're going to wait a few moments and delay the modeling to kind of check which kids are getting it right away and which kids need a little bit more time to process. And then you're going to restate the vocabulary, and you are going to um, stop the modeling altogether. Annie, yes, you can catch it at the end of the presentation. It'll be there at the end. You can get it back. And in the stop modeling, you're going to say your structures, and you're going to stop at that point and watch to see who can do the gestures and who needs still some more help. You want to mix it up. You don't want to always do the same stuff always. You want to mix it up. You want to vary your groups so that you have small groups, larger groups. Pick this side of the classroom, then the middle of the classroom, then the left side of the classroom. And you're going to want to assess. And the best way to assess TPR and gestures is just to have everybody close their eyes while you state the structures and you watch for the kids who are doing it and doing it quickly. If the kids don't close their eyes, obviously they need more practice. If they close their eyes and they're getting them wrong, they need more practice. But you're looking for the confident ones, the ones who close their eyes, and the ones who do the gestures very quickly. Now, one tip here is don't spend too much time on this particular activity. The problem is with TPR and the gestures is that they have no context around them. So they'll learn the isolated structures really well with this, but they won't be able to string them together into anything comprehensible. So we don't want to spend a lot of time. In the old version of TPRS, we spent a lot of time with this. In the new version, we're spending very little time. 5 to 7 minutes with 3 structures is all that you really are going to be spending. The continuation of step 1 is the PQA portion, and this is the personalized questions and answers. You're going to ask personalized questions using the structures. In the beginning, for your level 1 kids, you're not going to be able to ask open-ended questions. You're going to have to ask questions like, how many of you swim? And then you have them raise their hands, and then you pick a student who raised their hand, and then you can ask them some more personalized questions about that. But for your upper levels and later in the year in level 1, you can ask more open-ended questions. What sport do you like to do? Or what do you like? What would you like to have? Those open-ended questions instead of forcing them to say, would you like to have a car? Type questions. The more personalized you can make them, the more open-ended, the better they are to engage the students because they're more personal. They're not being locked into a particular answer. We want to circle these responses, circle, circle, circle everything. And the reason for that is to get those repetitions in there. We need to get a repetitions of all those structures to start that acquisition process so that they're starting to acquire that vocabulary naturally. We want to coach to play the game. We don't want boring answers. We want to try to coach from them all of those answers that make our classroom much more rich, much more fun, and much more interesting. And we need to coach that. We accept all answers, but when we have to pick and choose, we're going to pick the ones that are a little further out there, and that way the students will understand those are the types of answers that we're looking for. When you're doing PQA, unlike a textbook where you're supposed to ask the same questions to all the students, we want to focus on a few students at a time. We don't want to rush through that. And it's kind of like PQA, the best way I can describe it is like when you go to a party and you're mingling. You don't want to go through and work your way through every single person at that party and ask just a question or two. You want to stick with one person and get to know them a little bit before you move on. And it's the same thing with PQA. You want to ask a student a question about a particular structure, but you want to go from the general information down to the more specific information, getting further and further into the details before you move on to another student with another question. You want to keep your ears open to those great answers because those great answers lead to great stories. And so if you can get the kids to play that game and give you those great answers, you could have a story budding already for yourself. An example of this was I had the student not many years ago, a couple years ago. He was very Republican and very proud of being a Republican, and it was right at the election year. And he was kind of a, just a regular student. I don't want to say boring, but that's the best way I can describe it. He would never give me anything original. He would just tell me the facts. So when we were asking about his weekend, this is like in April, he started going, well, I went to Guadalajara for the weekend. And I was like, oh, because he's never gone from the to the surreal before the imaginary. He's always been very concrete. And so I played with this, and he goes, yeah, I went to Guadalajara. And I said, well, how did you get there? And he told me how he got there. And he said, and I met George Bush there. And so he went this whole way, and it was the first time that he had done that, but that led us into the story for the next day. So it was a really good way to do that. So you always want to listen for those great answers. And although it took, 6, 7 months for us to get there, I had to try coaching these kind of answers from our students. The next activity would be in step 2 of TPRS, which is asking the story. And this is the heart of TPRS. This is where we spend a lot of our time. Truthfully, all you really need to do a story is to have a problem and a possible solution. And we don't have to be storytellers. That's not our job. And problems, we try to think of the problem, try to make it really interesting. We don't have to work that hard. The problem is usually inherent in the structure. If the structure is he has, the problem is he doesn't have in the beginning, and at the end he has it. If he says he wants to eat something, the problem is he doesn't have that or he can't eat that, and then we have some kind of solution that comes from that. So we don't have to think about these elaborate problems. We just have to come up with a simple problem, and it's usually inherent in one of our structures. If our structure is there is a man, well, our problem is there isn't one. There's a woman or there's an animal instead, and we can work our way, try to get to the solution of there is a man. We start with a statement, and that could come from your PQA or it can come straight from your structure. And then we ask the details of our students. If we tell them the story that we have in our head or that came from the book or that we pre-planned, they're not going to be engaged and they're going to tune out and they're not going to acquire the language. So we need to ask those details. I may have the same problem and the same possible solution for all 4 of a level 1 class, all my, 4 periods, but because I'm asking the details, all 4 stories are going to be entirely different. Again, when we get the details, we need to circle, circle, circle. That is so important. If we don't circle the information, then it's not getting highly repetitive and comprehensible input, and they're not acquiring the language. Yes, Teresita? Oh, I'm sorry, Teresita. I assumed everybody knew what circling meant. Circling is a way of doing highly repetitive questions and scaffolding those questions to various students. We don't want to do them in a particular pattern, but the types of questions we're going to be asking is yes or no questions, either or questions, and then open-ended questions. So for example, if we have a statement, there is a man, I would ask a yes or no question. Is there a man? Yes, there is a man. Class, is there a man or is there a woman? Oh, there is a man. That's right, class. There is a man. Class, is there a woman? No, there's not a woman. There's a man. Class, what is there? Then they would answer a man. You're right, it was a man. There was a man. That's circling. By going through and using the questions over and over, repeating yes or no, either or, and open-ended questions around the structure that you're trying to teach them, that's what we call circling. That make it clear for you, Teresita? You're welcome. And if I can find where you are. Aaron, you raised your hand. Go ahead and press the talk button and then we can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, we can.
Sorry.
As long as you hold down the talk
I
button,
have a
we can
hard
hear you.
time focusing and keeping myself in the structures and not allowing all this other new vocab. Any suggestions on how to be restrained?
I'm not sure if restrained is the best way to do it. There are days when I know I have my 3 structures, but I may only get to one of them because we just got on a tangent. As long as I'm speaking comprehensibly in the target language the whole period, then I'm doing my job successfully and I can just move that structure to the next day. So I don't know if I want to be necessarily restrained. If we're too restrained, we may lose the kids and they may get bored. If we allow them to take some of the reins from us and give up some of that control to the kids, we move to a lot more student-centered teaching. It's a little bit more open-ended, but our kids are more engaged and they're going to acquire more language rather than trying to force them to stick with our structures. We're always focusing on high frequency structures so we can always get them in another day. I really wouldn't be worried about that particular thing. If you feel that you really do need to focus on those particular structures, um, you can start with a scripted story, and Nancy has put up here also your structure should be on the wall that you see. Yeah, I always have my structures up on the screen so I see them, the kids see them, so I can work with that, so I always kind of know where I'm going.
Yeah, I have done that just to try to keep
well.
myself on task. But I
feel
do stay in the target language, and they all are definitely into it. So I think it sounds like it's okay. What happens? I just feel like I use a lot of other vocab, and I'm trying not to veer off too much for the lower level students.
and I understand what you're saying. As long as it's comprehensible, I think it's okay. If they're engaged, I think it's okay. Let me give you an example with Blaine. Blaine is doing a demonstration of reading Pobriana. He reads the first sentence and never gets back to the book for an hour and a half. He went on completely off on a different tangent. He went on a parallel story with Pobriana and another student, but he never actually got back to the book. Obviously, the goal was to talk about the book, but he went completely away. So as long as your students are engaged and they're learning and it's comprehensible, I believe it's okay. And Julie, you're very welcome. And Julie has a question here. Going back to PQA, say in the first few days of Spanish 1, can you give us some examples of good follow-up questions regarding sports? I get stumped after I find out that they play football because they don't know much vocab. Well, I would ask them, do you play football with their friends or do you play football at school? Oh, you play football at school. What position do you play? They're going to have to tell me that in English, and I'm going to put it in Spanish. Then I go, okay, did you win your last game or did you lose your last game? Oh, you won your last game. What was the score? They're not going to be able to tell you the numbers. You write them up on the board. Do you play football in the spring, the summer, the winter, or the fall? Oh, you play football in the fall. That's great. What months are the fall? Are the falls September and October and November, or are they June, July, and August? So you can go that way. Think about all the different types of things that you have to teach in a level one class, especially at the beginning, and gear your questions through that path. Did that answer your question, Julie? Great. Okay, so we're asking our story here. We've done our circling. Whenever you get stumped or you think they need a review, it's great to um, go back to the beginning or go back and recycle some of that information. I understand what you're saying, Carrie. Thanks. Um, so I want that, so you can always go back and recycle and review the information and let the kids do the work. As I said, all you need is a problem and a possible solution, and let the kids come up with the story. And as I said, because this is the heart of the TPRS, spend no less than 30 minutes on asking the story. 30 minutes is a good time. If you can get longer, that's great. But I would never, ever start a story with less than 30 minutes to be able to do it. I don't have much success being able to continue a story from one day to the next. Some people can do it. Usually the enthusiasm is gone and I can't bring it back the next day. Step 3 is extended reading, the read and discuss portion. And the basic standard reading protocol is you're going to read a sentence in the target language as the teacher. The students do a choral translation. And then you're going to ask questions and discuss. And the types of questions that you can ask are the concrete ones, the facts of the story. You can try to get some more details from the story that aren't in the book that the kids can guess on or make true for that. And then you can also start to go into a parallel story or a side story and get some information that has nothing to do with that particular story. You've got a character, and you're going to pull that character out and find a little story about that character, and then come back into the reading. Once you've done that through a paragraph, then you're going to go back and start over again. So you read the sentence, students translate, you ask questions, and you go back. Emily has a question. Do students have to do a choral translation? Is there any way to do it without using English? Um, I talked with Susie Gross on this, and I tried it both ways, and the resounding answer to that is you want them to use the English. Absolutely. If you don't, you do not know if all of your kids are understanding what you're reading. The kids will say that they're understanding, but they may not be. And the only way that you're going to get that note to know is if they translate it into English. So it's really an important thing. And I got away from that translation in English at one time, and I found my kids were poor understanders of what they read. And talking with Susie Gross, this is the reason why. Angela says, when students are doing choral translation, what is the best way to keep track of the responses while they translate out loud at a different pace? The key is to get them on the same page and they're at the same pace. So I have to be the orchestra conductor and conduct them with the word by word by word so that we're all on the same page so I can hear for the differences. And Maria says, what do you do if you have a student that speaks the target language? Do you let the student translate for the rest of the class? No, I generally don't. And we have special classes for kids who speak the language already. We have native speaker classes, but if you don't, then those kids during this particular needs to sit back and just listen. Because it's very frustrating to a kid who's learning the language to have someone who can always answer the questions and always translate really, really quickly and while they're still trying to process. So it's really not fair. Think about putting a native English speaker in an ESL class and having them do the work there too. It's just not fair to the other students. To keep the same pace, Angela, I tell them they have to put their finger on the word with me. So we're all doing it at the same time, and I'm just conducting it. Slow down. We need to stay together. There's really not a trick to it that I can say. If they're not together, I say we do it again. We need to be on the same page, the same time. Go slower or faster, however it needs to be. That's a very good thing. Teresita says one voice. When they're translating, I want them to go slowly, so they are going to go one by one word by one word. We're reading the extended reading. So whether you pre-wrote it, you got it from your textbook, whatever the extended reading is that you have. We read one sentence at a time, and then once we get through a paragraph, then we start asking our questions and discuss. Okay, some tips for this. I like to write my story before the week begins. And the reason I do this is because I don't want it to be the same as the story that we're going to do in class. If we tell the story in class, and then we read the same story with more words, and then we do a story strip with the same story, the kids get really bored. So I like to write my story before the week begins. I'm using the same structures, but it's a different story. I put my kids in the story. It is a different story so that I can keep the interest up and high. And then I like to highlight any possible grammar pop-ups that I might want to focus on when we do the reading. If I don't do that, I tend to forget to pop up anything, and I'll go through the whole day and realize I didn't pop up any particular grammar. Step 3, continuation, is the readers. If you're going to do one of the novels, whether it be Blaine's or Carol's novels, again, it's the same reading protocol, but you want to mix it up some ways because they can get, really boring because our language is so contrite at this stage. The stories can't be really elaborate and really exciting, so we have to make them that way. So a couple of ways to do that is to act out some really important scenes, like in Pirates, you can act out some of the sword fighting scenes, or in, how do you say it in English? I can't think of it. The Trip of My Life, when they go to the pyramid and there's a knife across her neck, and the insect woman's trying to push him over the pyramid. You can act these out, and it makes it really fun for the kids. You can create side stories. They really don't talk about this particular character very much. Well, you can make up a story about that particular character and make it really, really interesting. In Piratas, there's affairs going on, so we like to make up stories about the wife or the girlfriend who's in the story mentioned but not given any time on the page. You can create parallel stories. So if you're talking like with poor Anna, and she has lots of problems with her friends and with her family, you can ask another student, do you have problems with your friends and family? And you can have a parallel story, one about your student, one from the book, and you can compare and contrast. And you can also add details. If there's something that's missing in the story, you can add the detail. If they're talking, she's got a Chevrolet car, but they don't tell you what color or what size, you can stop for a moment and add some details to make it more interesting. Ask the class, well, what color car do you think it might be? And get that information. One tip for these readers for homework is to have the students reread the information. Since you've already read it in class and already translated in class, it's not going to be new information. They're just reviewing it, they're rereading it, and it's another repetition of the information, and it should be all comprehensible because you've already done all the work in class. Ball asks, what's the difference between parallel and side stories? A side story is about a character mentioned in the book, but is not talked about in the book. They're just mentioned. And a parallel story is a story about a student that that compare and contrast with a character that's in the book. Annie says, with my elementary school kids, I have them read it to someone at home and get some great feedback from parents. That's also a great thing to do, to always include the parents in there. Bobby asked, do you have that many copies of the readers that you can send them home for homework? What if you have several classes reading from the same book at the same time? We do have the readers to send them home, so we can do that. If you don't have that opportunity, you don't have enough readers, you only have a class set, then that would not be a possibility. Okay, the next little activity is our discussion, our weekend talk. Here you can ask students about their weekend, and you can do this in level one. Um, and he says, I do a page at a time and I type them up and hand them out. That is possible, and the only problem is it's technically a copyright violation. So if you want to do that, that's up to you guys. But technically, you can't give out change the format of the text and hand it out in any way, shape, or form unless you have Black Line master rights. You could, yes, Kelly says you could assign different chapters to different sections. So this week, these kids will read this one, and the next week, another kids will read another section. That's perfect. Oh, if it's your own stories, Annie, then that's perfect. But we were talking about the actual readers themselves, the novels, the Blaine Ray novels, or the Carol Gobb novels. If it's your own stories, yes, you're more than welcome to distribute those. Okay, so discussion the weekends. Ask the students about their weekends. What I like to have them do so they're not so nervous is write down 3 activities that they did over the weekend on paper first, so that way they can have something ready to say when it's time for them to speak. This is a variation on PQA. And again, just like always, we're going to circle those responses and those details. And I like to allow the kids to lie. I tell them, I don't want any boring answers. I want interesting stuff. So if you didn't do anything exciting over the weekend, make something up. Again, we always coaching that game. We want them to get that more interesting stuff in there. That when the kid told me he went for the weekend to Guadalajara and he met George Bush, it was funny because the class knew he was a very serious kid. And they actually were saying, you went to Guadalajara for the weekend? He had them fooled for a time, and that's exactly what you want to be able to do. Julie, we haven't gone over what days. I'm giving you all the activities that you possibly can do, and we're going to break them down into the days at the end. So we haven't really talked about the days here. I've just given you all the different tools, all the different activities that you can do during the week, and we'll talk about when to do them and what order at the end. Teresita, no, this particular part of the discussion is not to try to get a new story. It's really just to get personal with your kids and find out about what's going on in their lives. If you're talking about what they did over the weekend, they're going to be interested and they're learning the language at the same time. And the whole goal is to keep it interesting and comprehensible for them so they'll pay attention long enough to acquire the language. So it's just something a little bit different um, than an actual story. Though you might use some of the information that you gained from this in stories, but that's not the ultimate goal. Okay, this activity can be used in varying parts of the week. Sometimes I use it on Mondays and I ask about what you did over the past weekend. Or you could put it at the end of the week and use the future tense and say, what will you do or what are you going to do this weekend? So you can put it at the beginning or you can put it at the end. Read alouds. Read alouds are so important. They really are. And even in high school, the kids love them. So we have to do a kindergarten day. And that's when you're going to read aloud a kindergarten book to your kids. And the best way to do this is first to pick the children's book that's most appropriate to the student's level. Oh, Maria's back on the weekend stuff. I pick. It's not a volunteer in my class. I pick 3 kids each day to do it, each Monday to talk about their weekend or Friday whenever I do it. And they have to talk about it. So it's not an option for them. And if you make it fun for them, make it interesting, then I generally don't have a problem. But it's an expectation. When I call your name, you're going to tell me what you did over the weekend, and I won't let you get away with the boring stuff. So I'll make something up for you if you don't make something up for yourself. So here on the kindergarten day, we're going to read the children's books out loud to them. We want to set it up like an elementary school, so I like to put a chair in the front of the room and put carpet squares or bean bags and let them sit on the floor. Last year I wasn't able to do this. We had too many kids for the size of my room, so I wasn't able to set that type of an area up. So we kind of lost a little bit there. But as much as you can recreate that kindergarten feel, it's better for the kids. Julie says, do you ask every single student? Not each day. I'll pick 3 this week and another 3 next week and another 3 the week after that. So everybody will get a turn. It's just not everybody can get a turn that week. Some kids are really excited. They have something they really want to tell me, so I'll let them tell me what they want to do, and they'll be one of my 3. But other weeks I just have to pull out of the hat, and those are the 3 kids I talk about. When we read the kindergarten day books, we don't want to read them word for word. We want to read them like we would read to an infant, especially in level 1. As we move towards the upper levels, we can read more and more of the text, just like as a baby grows, you can read more and more of the text. But we're going to read it really infant style. And what I mean by infant style is if we're reading Winnie the Pooh, I'm not going to read, oh, there is a bear. His name was Winnie the Pooh. He had a friend named Piglet. I'm going to say, oh, class, look, there's a bear. The bear is yellow. The bear is fat. Class, is the bear fat or is the bear skinny? Is the bear yellow or is the bear red? And I'm reading it like this, and again, we're circling all the information to increase comprehensible input. One really great way to make this particular activity a success is to allow students to bring in snacks, just like in kindergarten, or bring in stuffed animals so that you can make it really, really fun. My kids really like that. I tell them we're going to have kindergarten day I tell them on Friday, they're going to have it on Monday, and they say great. And I tell them, you can bring a little snack for yourself. You're not bringing for the whole class. Just if you want to bring food, bring your food in. You can bring something to drink. You can bring, cookies or something. You can't make a mess. You make a mess, we lose the ability to do this. And the kids really like it. I have kids who bring in their stuffed animals and they want to cuddle with their stuffed animal and eat their cookies and drink their milk as they are listening to the story, and they really, really do enjoy this. Yes, CI is comprehensible input. Thank you, Kelly. Okay, here I'm going to have a little demo of the kindergarten day. What I did with my class here. It's one of the first books that I read. And hopefully my videos will work for us today. What I need everybody to do is when the video stops playing for you, when you're through the video, if you can just type the word done in the chat box so that I can see when most people are done, because we're all going to be done at a slightly different pace. Go ahead and enlarge the first video. Generally not. Carrie asked, does it last for the whole period? Generally not. I have a few other activities that I do during that time. We'll talk about what days and everything at the end. So here goes how I'm demoing the kindergarten day with my class.
Ok, clase. Había un oso. ¿Qué es un oso? Verde. A ver, muy bien. Clase, ¿de qué color es el oso? Verde. Verde, muy bien. ¿Es el oso azul? ¿Sí o no? No. No, el oso no es azul. ¿Es el oso rojo? No. No, no es rojo tampoco. ¿Es el oso amarillo o verde? Verde. Verde, muy bien. ¿Está el oso contento o triste? Contento. Contento. El oso está contento. Oso verde está en el bosque. ¿Qué es un bosque? Trees. Not trees, but a whole bunch of trees is a forest. Muy bien. Hay muchos árboles en el.
Okay, I'll go ahead and send a link. Apparently, it's having trouble on some of your computers there with the slower connections. Let me get the link up here for you. Those who aren't having trouble, I'll continue playing it on my end here. But there is the link there for you. I'll continue playing now.
Hay muchos árboles en el bosque. ¿Qué son árboles?
Trees.
Trees, muy bien. ¿De qué color es esta parte del árbol? Morado, muy bien. Esta parte es morada. ¿Y de qué color es esta parte? Verde, muy bien. ¿Es un oso? ¿Sí o no?
No.
No, no es un oso. ¿Es un perro?
No.
No.
¿Es un perro? No es un perro. ¿Qué es un perro?
Dog.
A dog. No es un perro, es un pájaro. Muy bien. Es un pájaro. ¿Es un pájaro grande? ¿Es un perro? No, no es un perro. Es un pájaro.
No.
No, no es un pájaro tampoco. ¿Es un pájaro o un gato?
Gato.
Un gato, muy bien. Y clase, el gato tiene una cola. ¿Qué es una cola? Tail, muy bien. ¿Es una cola corta o larga?
Larga.
Larga, muy bien. Larga. ¿De qué color es el gato? ¿Azul o verde?
Verde.
Verde, muy bien. Verde. Y esa es leche. Leche. ¿Qué significa leche?
Milk.
Milk. Muy bien. ¿Y de qué color es la leche?
Blanco.
Blanca. Muy bien.
Okay, I'll give everybody a moment to finish up their video since some people had some technical difficulties. Okay, Lucia, go ahead and press your talk button and we can hear you. Talk button's at the bottom of your window. We can't hear you, Lucia.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Okay. Yes, we can.
Great.
Did you have a question?
No, I was just responding as you push your talk button. It would fade in and out. I'd have your voice and then I wouldn't, but I do right now, so this is good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, sorry for those of you having the technical problems with the video. The speed of your internet connection plays a really big part, and if you have cable, the more people who log on in your neighborhood, the slower your speed goes. So that can also be a big influence there. Are you still hearing the echo, Kelly? It was because she had her mic on and she was repeating back what I was saying. Okay, and we had a couple questions that need to be addressed here. Let me go back up. Bobby said she was having trouble getting her kids to buy in sitting on the floor. Just like anything else, it's something you have to make a procedure in your classroom. So if it's important for you to have them sit on the floor, then you need to make it important. Don't let them sit in the back of the room. They need to sit within arm's reach of you, around in a semicircle. It's all how you handle it. If it's not important to you for them to do that and they want to sit in the chairs, then that's fine too. I just find that I make it really fun, and putting them on the floor worked really well. In my current classroom, we are in a much smaller classroom, and we had more kids than we were expecting to have, so there was just no room to put them all on there with as many tables as I had to fit in my room to get them all in there, so that's why we didn't do it. But if you're having trouble with it, you have to make your choice. Is it something that's important to you? And if it is, then you need to establish the procedure, and they need to do it just like anything else. They don't get to control what goes on in the classroom. That's our job to do that. If it isn't important to you, you can just let it go. It's up to you how you want to handle it. I just find most of my kids, when I tell them they can bring in cookies and milk, and they can bring in their stuffed animals, that they have a good time doing that, that they buy into that and have some fun. And then about scanning, yes, I scan all of these in here, and I write to the publishers, telling them the reason why, that I'm reading it to a large class of students. I need to be able to make it big, and they usually give me the permission to do so. Anytime that you change the format of something that's copyrighted, you are breaking copyright law. So unless you have permission to do so, you're technically breaking the rules of it. You can't make copies of it. You can't scan it. You can't retype it. You can't do any of those kinds of things if you're really going to be strict with following the letter of the law. And our school really is strict about checking that for us. I mean, if we have a copy, we don't make our copies. We send it to a copy room to do it. And if it's more than 10% of a book, they won't do it. So they're really technical about it with our school. Okay, Bobby, if you don't have the room to do it, just like I didn't have the room, then just have them sit at their desks, and then you just use the book as best you can and walk around um, in a semicircle to show them the pictures. Read the book and then walk around to show them the pictures is the best way to be able to do that. No, Emily, you cannot copy for educational purposes. You have to, 10% of any material is all that's legal to make copies. And it's a fallacy that we can just make copies and use for educational purposes. Even buying a videotape on Target and showing it to your class, you can't do that. You need a special license when you do that. Yes, a document camera you can use. You're not breaking any copyright with a document camera. That is very true. Okay, we're going to need to move on because now we're running really behind here. Okay, songs. Songs is another activity that we do, and there's all different types of songs you can do: children's songs, popular music, or learning songs. You need to choose a song that's appropriate to the student's level, and then copy the lyrics for the students with words missing. So you're going to leave out some words, not the difficult words, the words that they have an opportunity to be able to guess. And then they listen to the song 2 or 3 times and try to fill in the blanks as they listen to the song. So this is a good way to introduce a song to them. They have to actually pay attention because they have maybe 5 or 6 blanks in it that they need to be able to fill out. Silent sustained reading, we don't need to spend a lot of time on this one, but basically you're going to create a reading library in your classroom. Get books wherever you can in the target language, get magazines, get newspapers, get a wide variety. You're probably going to have to start out small and work your way bigger. Give students time to read any book, magazine, or newspaper in the target language they choose. So if they want to read telenovelas in Spanish, they can bring that in and then they can read it. I usually have to screen the telenovelas because there's some stuff that's not appropriate for the classroom. But if they want to bring it in, if they want to bring in Sports Illustrated in Spanish and read it, that's perfectly okay. All that I care about is that it's in the target language. Kim, are you asking what are my favorite books? I don't have any particular. I just go to my shelf and look for a particular book that I'm going to do this particular week. So I don't really, I don't have a list of ones that I consistently use. From year to year, it varies every time. How long do you typically spend on this type of reading? About 15 to 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour at the most on the kindergarten day. Oh, on songs, um, why don't you, if you can email me off the webinar, then I'll go ahead and give you a list of some songs that I do, because it's going to be specific to what I teach, which is Spanish, and I generally teach Spanish 1 and 2 for the most part. So you can email me and I'll give you a list of some of the songs that I do. But again, sometimes it varies. There's some consistent songs that I do, but not always the same ones. Accountability. I don't want to make sustained silent reading a chore, so I go back and forth with making them keep a reader's log or some documentation. But if you're finding your kids aren't doing it, then you might want to put an accountability piece in there for them. The most important part of this is that you, as the teacher, need to model good reading habits. So you need to be reading the book, and don't read it at your desk because you're too far away from the kids. Get up, open the book, walk around the room as you read, but you're modeling good reading habits for them to make it look fun and make sure that everybody's on task. The next part of the songs, after we've introduced them, is to create gestures or a dance for the week's song. Lots of times I have kids come up with the gestures and or the dance that goes with it. And then as we sing it, they're dancing or gesturing depending on the song. And as I said, having the kids come up with it saves a lot of work for us. And I've got a little demo here. It's actually a video that the kids made for a song that we do in Spanish. And they're using the dance that we made up in class to do. So they exhibit that in here. So we're going to go ahead and do the video again. I'll put the link up for those of you who want to watch it there. And again, let me know when you guys are done so we can move on at that point.
Enfrente de, detrás de y al lado de, entre, a la derecha, a la izquierda, a la derecha, a la izquierda. Enfrente de, detrás de y al lado de, entre, a la derecha, a la izquierda, a la derecha, a la izquierda. Enfrente de, detrás de y al lado de, entre, a la derecha, a la izquierda, a la derecha, a la izquierda. ¿Dónde queda el museo? ¿Dónde queda el teatro? ¿Dónde queda la plaza? ¿Dónde queda la tienda? ¿Dónde queda el museo? ¿Dónde queda el teatro? ¿Dónde queda la plaza? ¿Dónde queda la tienda? Enfrente de, detrás de, al lado de, entre, a la derecha, a la izquierda, a la derecha, a la izquierda. Enfrente de, detrás de, al lado de, entre, a la derecha, a la izquierda, a la derecha, a la izquierda. ¿Dónde queda el museo? ¿Dónde queda el teatro? ¿Dónde queda la plaza? ¿Dónde queda la tienda? ¿Dónde queda el museo? ¿Dónde queda el teatro? ¿Dónde queda la plaza? ¿Dónde queda la tienda? ¿Dónde queda el museo? ¿Dónde queda el teatro? ¿Dónde queda la plaza? ¿Dónde queda la tienda? ¿Dónde queda el museo? ¿Dónde queda el teatro? ¿Dónde queda la plaza? ¿Dónde queda la tienda? ¿Dónde queda el museo? ¿Dónde queda el teatro? ¿Dónde queda la plaza? ¿Dónde queda la...
It looks like a lot of people are done at this point. Yes, that was a Senior Woolies song. And for those of you who don't do Spanish, basically it was the prepositions in front of, behind, next to, in between, to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. So we had the little gestures that they did, a little dance that they made up that we did to demonstrate the knowledge of those words. And then for a project they did at the end of the year, they made this little video. So that's what you can do with the song, dances, and gestures. Because we had some really great questions, we are going to run out of time. I will stay and finish it up, and if you have to leave, you can watch the video. It will have the full thing on there, but if you want to stay, you're welcome to. We'll just continue on through. Timed writings is another activity that we do, and the goal is for the students to be able to write a 100-word story in the target language in 5 minutes. On average, in your native tongue, you should be able to do that, write a 100-word comprehensible story in your own language in 5 minutes. So that's why we have this goal. And basically what we do is start at the 10-minute mark at the beginning of the year, and we have them write for the full 10 minutes. And when the class average hits 100 words, then we drop the time by 30 seconds. And then we keep progressing through the year, and by the end of the year, our goal is to get to that 5-minute mark, and most of the time we do. I keep track of the word count, but not for a grade. Some kids, they might have a lot of knowledge, but they just can't write fast. But I want to keep track of the word count so that I know like a growth chart for a parent would check to see if their kid is growing at an acceptable rate. I tell the kids I want to see just an upward trend throughout the year. You're going to have some peaks and some valleys, but I want to see a general increase from the beginning of the year towards the end of the year. Yes, I do this weekly. I'll talk about the timings of all these. Remember, this is just our toolbox of all these activities, and then I'll tell you how I put them into my week at the end. I like to grade 2 per quarter based on quality, not quantity for a quiz grade. The kids don't know which ones I'm going to grade in advance. I just pick randomly 2 sets from each class, and I will grade those particular ones for them. To finish up our song at the end of the week, I like to do a competition. The kids really get into this. You divide the class into 2 teams, however you do it. Sometimes it's left versus right, sometimes boys versus girls, sometimes athletes versus non-athletes, blondes versus brunettes, etc. However you want to split up the class, I vary it up each week. But I have them compete on who sings the loudest. And then we alternate line by line or verse by verse, depending on the song. And then I give participation points to both the winners and the losers. So I give 1 participation point to all the losers and then 2 participation points to all the winners. So everybody gets some points and the winners just get some more. And the kids really, really like doing this. If I skip it 1 week, they get upset. And you can use it as a reward for a great week. So if they've really behaved and did what you're supposed to be doing and were on task all week, you can use it as a reward for them to be able to do this. Or a PAT-like activity if you follow, the Jones classroom management, Fred Jones classroom management techniques. Angela, I've only had 1 complaint about the loud singing, and he was a sourpuss history teacher, and he was next to me for 3 years, and at the end of the 3rd year, he complained one day, and I don't know what it was for. We do it once a week, first couple minutes of the period on a Friday. It wasn't usually a big deal, and I never complained about his movies being so loud that we could hear them in my room. But for the most part, that's the only time I've had a complaint in 10 years of doing it. My door is open all the time. Our hall is all foreign language, so if I'm not doing it, then Carmen Andrew Sanchez is doing it in her room, or one of the other teachers is doing it. So it's really not a big deal for us at all. But if you have that problem, then you're going to have to work within your neighbors. But I don't have that. I haven't had that issue except for that one time. Yeah, I had the exact same experience. And so with that sourpuss history teacher, he came in right in the middle of class and got really rude and obnoxious about it. But I'm like, you've been there for 3 years and never said a word about it beforehand. So we just stopped for that year and didn't do it again. For that one, the kids were disappointed. But what are you going to do? You have to work with your neighbors. So that's the only time I've had it, as I said, in 10 years. Yeah, It is just for the fun part. The kids like to be able to yell and scream it. Nope, there's no other reason, just to be fun. Okay, story strip is another activity that I like to do, and that's taking a comic strip and using that to ask your story. Again, you're still asking the story, not telling the story. And it's a great review of the week's structures to have another third story there. You've had the oral story that you came up with, a written story, and now you're doing another version of an oral story based off a comic strip. Use the same story techniques as asking the story with the actors. So you're going to, still do your circling, 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 and all those regular techniques. One of the tips I found that works really well, especially for special needs kids, is to cut up the squares of the story to present one by one, either on a transparency, a document camera, or on a PowerPoint on an LCD projector, which is how I do it, because we use Carol Gobb's materials, and she's already got them broken up into the PowerPoints. But by only showing one square, number one, they can't see what the ending is. Sometimes it's a trick ending. And number two, for those kids who really need to focus, they only have to focus on one square at a time, and so it really works well for them. And yes, we have another demo here. Bobby, sometimes they're student-made ones, but most of the time they're the ones from my TPRS textbook. Blaine has them in his, Carol has them in hers. They're in a lot of the TPRS supplements that come with the textbooks as well, the big textbooks. They have the pictures in there. I know I've taken some from Ben Conmigo. They have some pictures in theirs. So you can get them from any different place that you can. You can also use regular comic strips and just white out the English and use them. However you want to do that. Okay, so we've got one more demo here. I swear this is the last demo. I apologize. I don't know why we're having so much trouble today. Post the link again. And I'll include all these links in the follow-up email so you can watch them if you're not getting any luck now to do them. Thanks, Kathy. Okay, here we go. We'll try this particular demo. Okay, this is one of Carol Gobb's stories. You can't really see the pictures in there. The brightness factor of the LCD projector kind of takes it out. But what you can see at this first frame here is at the top, I've typed up on top of it some key vocabulary that we need to be able to ask this part of the story. And we can go frame by frame. So we have those, and then I add in additional words as we go because I'm asking the story. It's not the exact same story we've done in any way, shape, or form. So it's going to be a little bit different. So there might be some vocabulary that we need to put up on the board. So here I go. There's the link for in the Vimeo, and then I'll play it here as well.
Okay, clase. Había un muchacho. ¿Había una muchacha o un muchacho?
Muchacho.
Había un muchacho. Muy bien. ¿Cómo se llamaba el muchacho? Muy bien. El muchacho se llamaba Luscious. Muy bien. El muchacho, ¿qué hizo? What does ¿qué hizo mean?
What does he make?
Not what,
What did he make?
What's he
What did
doing?
he do?
Open the door.
¿Qué hizo el muchacho?
Abierta la puerta.
Él entró
La puerta.
en el dormitorio. Muy bien. ¿Entró en su dormitorio? No, él no entró en su dormitorio. ¿Qué significa su? His. It can also mean her or their, depending on the context.
So you guys.
Okay, muy bien. Él no entró en su dormitorio, entró en el dormitorio. Él entró en el dormitorio de su hermana. ¿Entró él en el dormitorio de su papá?
No.
¿Entró él en el dormitorio de su mamá?
No.
¿Entró en su dormitorio?
No.
¿De quién? ¿De quién dormitorio entró él?
Hermana.
En el dormitorio de su hermana. ¿Debía? ¿Qué significa? ¿Debía él entró en el dormitorio?
Sí. No.
What is hermana mean, class?
Sister.
Sister. Muy
Okay, it looks like most people are done with the video. Too funny, Kelly. Okay, so here I just took the drawings that were in Carol's books or whatever book you have. You can put it up as a transparency. You can put it up on a PowerPoint like it was on mine, or you can use a document camera. You just write in the words that you need to add to the story. And as Teresita said, yes, I'm asking them for the answers. So it's still asking the story, but instead of having actors, I'm using the comic strip to be able to tell the story. And as I said, because we're doing it in all these different ways, I've got it in the reading, I've got it acting with actors, we've got it with the comic book. We're doing the same thing. We're doing a story and we're circling those questions over and over and over again, but it appears slightly different to the kids so it doesn't seem like they're doing the same thing all the time. Okay, another activity that I like to do is what I call a quick quiz, or I call it a mini prueba in Spanish. You make up a quick 5-question quiz for a warm-up, put it up on a transparency or up on the LCD projector, or just write it up on the board. You can base it on anything, vocabulary you're working on, structures, culture, etc. It doesn't matter. But what it is a self-check for students to see if they're on track. So I have a student, we go over the questions. I'll ask number one. I'll find a volunteer who's got the answer. We'll talk about it a minute, and kids check their own papers. Because as I said, it's just a self-check for the kids. If they got them all right, then they know where they're right where they're supposed to be. If they're having some trouble, then they can come in and get some help. Yes, it's very true. It does build the confidence. As I said, these are just quick 5-minute, 5-question quizzes. They don't take very long, but it does, and you want to mimic the types of quizzes that you would be giving in your classroom, so they're kind of little practice ones for them. Games. We can talk about games all day, but games are great for little brain breaks. Games rarely teach anything. They don't even really practice anything. The main purpose for a game is just to have some fun in there, and we just have to realize that that's what the point of it is. It puts the fun in learning for kids. They have to sit in a classroom for 6 to 7 hours a day, listening to teachers run on and run on and run on, and they have to sit, 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 sit. So this gives them an opportunity just to have a little bit of a brain break and have some fun in there, and we need to incorporate that in our classrooms and just respect that they're not going to be learning at this particular moment, but it's something that's fun and their brains need this. I like to try to collect a variety of games that practice different skills to spread throughout the year. So I have vocabulary games, and I have verb games, and I have reading games, and listening games, and all types of games that I try to make a big list of, so I have my own collection so I can pull one out to do. The key to making games successful is to limit how much you do them. If I'm going to make a game part of my lesson plan, then I'm going to only spend 15 minutes on it, and I'm going to do it every other week or so, or only maybe once a month. But especially if you have the block, a 5-minute game just to break up the monotony really does get the kids back on track. So just come up with a quick little 5-minute game that you can do. Everybody play this little thing really quick, and then we can get back on. So, you can do rock, scissors, paper, or something that you can break up the monotony with in the target language, and to do that, and you do that a lot in the longer classes when you have block schedules. Anywhere and everywhere, Bonnie. Bonnie asked, where do you find the games? I beg, steal, and borrow. I look in books. I go to seminars on them. I look on the internet for ideas. Whenever you can find them, just do a Google search for games. And they may not be geared for foreign language, but you can always find a way to adapt them to foreign language. Jeopardy you can do in foreign language. You know, we play baseball in my classroom with foreign language. I got a book from Teacher's Discovery that shows different ways to play games in the classroom. I just adapted it to foreign language instead of history or something else like that. Julie, I have a webinar that I talk about with games. I don't have a list of any particular games on my website, so that's the only it's the only place I know I have some in mind. You know, they're just ones I beg, borrowed, and steal from other places. Um, Bobby's saying Fred Jones' website has a bazillion games for the preferred activity time. And I said you can do a Google search and find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games. They're really not that hard to find. Even do one for, 5-minute game. Type it in there for Google search and you'll find a list of really quick 5-minute games that you can do. Yep, and Amy says Carol Gobb has a list of games on hers. Oh, and thank you, Dick. I appreciate that. Okay, skip a game. Nope. Okay, reflections. I know in our school, in our district, we have to put in higher order thinking skills in our classroom, and one of the ways to do this is to have kids reflect upon their learning, metacognition. And so I have them do this every couple weeks or so, a couple times a quarter, basically what I do. And I can have them reflect on their learning, the class itself, is it being successful for them or not, what learning strategies, what's working for them, what's not working for them. Um, Reflect on their successes in the class, reflect on their disappointments in the class, reflect on class activities, which activities are helping you learn, which ones are not helping you learn, and why. And asking them, how can I as the teacher help you learn better? And then putting the responsibility back on them. How can you as a student learn better? So make them do a couple of these a quarter, some metacognition, thinking about learning. And it is difficult to do well, so you need to teach how to do it, how to write a reflection and make it actually productive here. But don't do it too often and you'll wear out its welcome. Just a couple times a quarter is enough. Yes, absolutely, in English. It has to be in their native, because the idea here is not the target language, but to get them thinking about their learning and to take responsibility for what they're learning or not learning and to think about it a little bit more instead of just doing it. Assessments. You want to sporadically give an unannounced quiz based on some language skill, whether it be vocabulary or structures or listening or reading or writing or speaking. And you want to mix it up. You don't want to have a quiz day. You don't want to fall into that pattern where every Thursday is a quiz so they can predict it. You don't want to give the same quiz to all periods on the same day they talk. So I have a collection of quizzes. I know I have a vocabulary quiz and a listening quiz and a reading quiz and a speaking quiz and a writing quiz. And I'm going to give maybe first period the vocab quiz and second period the structure quiz and third period a reading quiz. They'll all get the same quizzes eventually, but it's just when and where they get mixed and matched. The key here is don't take too much class time for assessment. One a week is sufficient. Any time that we take out time in our classroom to assess, they're not learning anything. And we have so few minutes with our kids, we need to reduce the amount of assessing we do and increase the amount of comprehensible input. Unfortunately, the government doesn't believe this. They keep having us pull kids out for state tests, federal tests, mandated tests. And whenever they're taking a test, they're not learning anything. So we want to limit that as much as possible. Now here's where we're going to talk about where do I put all these activities. Now we have our toolbox full of all these activities. When are they best placed in the week? I'm going to do this 2 different places. Yes, Annie, I'm sorry we're kind of gone over here. Yes, in the link for the video, you can download the handout from the actual video link. So here we're going to talk about both the traditional and the block schedule. Okay, on Monday, I like to start off with the weekend talk and introduce my song, that close activity. That weekend talk is probably going to take about 10 to 15 minutes. The song activity is maybe 5 to 7 minutes. And then the bulk of my lesson is going to be the kindergarten day for that day. So that's going to be another 20 or so minutes. And then I'm going to finish up with step 1, the gestures in PQA. That's another 10 or 15 minutes or so. That's about an hour's time there. You can adjust the minutes that you need to adjust for the period that you have. But for the people who meet 5 days a week for roughly 45 minutes to an hour, this is what I would do on that first day. And you don't have to write this down. This is all in the handout, so you can see it exactly as you see it here. On Tuesday, I would start with silent, sustained reading and give them 5 to 10 minutes to do that. Start with less minutes and work your way up to more as their skills develop. Then we're going to sing and gesture the song. Oh, sure, Julie, let me go back really quick, but it's really just was roughly in my head. I'm just dividing up the time. It's not set in stone at all. You work it with the minutes that you have. But basically, we can talk about 10, 15 minutes. It's about 5 to 7 minutes for the close activity. Kindergarten days, about 15, 20 minutes, and about 10, 15 minutes for the step 1 gestures in PQA. But those are just roughly. I don't do daily warm-ups like the weekend talk. That's their warm-up. They're going to write 3 things down they did over the weekend before I talk about them. So that's what they do when they first walk into class. I don't have formal warm-ups. They're going to start right away with an activity. So on Tuesday, they wouldn't have a warm-up. They know when they walk in the class. On Tuesday, they need to pick up a book and start reading when they come into class. And so as I said, we start out with 5 minutes. And then we work our way up to about 10. Emily says, do you a suggestion if we have to do a quick daily warm-up according to our school? These are warm-ups, unless they're specifying what particular you have to do for a warm-up. These are warm-ups. The weekend talk, they're coming into class, they have to write down 3 things that they're doing that they did over the weekend in preparation for our discussion. Their warm-up for Tuesday is they come in, they grab a book, they sit down, and they're reading for the first 5 or 10 minutes of class. So unless they have to, your school is dictating that they have to do a worksheet type of a warm-up, those are my warm-ups. They're stuff they get started on right away when the bell rings, and they don't need me to guide them in doing it. Once we've done the sustained silent reading, we're going to sing and gesture our song. And then we're going to do the TPRS step 2, asking the story. And remember, that's going to take about 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes of your period. And your sustained silent reading, and you're going to work up to that 10 minutes. That's your 40 or so minutes, and then there are 5 minutes for the song. If you have longer, then you can spend longer on the story, but you want to make sure you spend at least 30 minutes on asking the story. On Wednesday, our warm-up, it's already up on the board, so they're going to come in right away and work on that quick quiz. We're going to continue singing and gesturing the song, and then I'm going to give them a timed writing. And then we're going to do step 3, the extended reading. They're going to have that longer version of a story. Most of the time, Aaron, yes, my students come up with the gestures themselves, but sometimes if they can't think of any, then I come up with them. But generally, they come up with the gestures. They like to have a lot of fun with that. And here, since the meat of our lesson is that read and discuss, you want to make sure you're spending at least 20 to 30 minutes doing that. And your timed writing is going to start off at 10 minutes at the beginning of the year and work your way down to 5 minutes towards the end. So that it will allow more time for the read and discuss portion. I vary up how I do, Bonnie, the timed writings. I have another webinar on the timed writings themselves. Sometimes I give them topics, sometimes I give them vocabulary, sometimes it's a completely free write. On Thursday, again, we're doing our sustained silent reading. Again, that's our warm-up. They come in, they grab a book, they sit down, and they start to read. We're going to continue singing and gesturing a song, and then we're going to bring our reader in, and our reader is now our main meat of our lesson here. We're going to spend 35 minutes on doing the actual reading in a novel. On Wednesday, Lucia, we are reading this as an extended reading. So we're using a reading that we created that's at least 300 to 500 words that's based on the same structures that we've been working on all week. And then Friday, we have our song competition. We're going to do our story strip. And our story strip is going to take another bulk of our time, about 30 minutes. And then then I'm going to end up with either doing the weekend talk, which you will be doing this weekend, doing a 10-minute game, or doing a reflection. Carol says, when can we have a level 1 get to 100 words? I start having them write in level 1 in quarter 2. They are expected to be able to write 100 words at the end of the first semester. They have to write 100 words on their exam. They might not be able to do it in 10 minutes. They have a lot longer on their exam, but they must be able to write to 100 words. But most kids are already writing 100 words at that 10-minute mark by that time. We're already probably down to about 7 minutes. Come end of January, we're probably at that 7-minute mark, working our way down to our 5 minutes. Emily asks, how do your days differ at the beginning of the year when they're doing the powerful QA? All those extra activities, I replace all the TPRS activities with powerful PQA in the beginning of the year. So I'm not doing any stories. I'm not doing gestures. I'm not doing readings at that point. I'm working at powerful PQA. And I'm not doing story strips. So step 1, step 2, step 3, and the story strip and the novel, all 5 of those things are taken out and replaced with powerful PQA at the beginning of the year for level 1. I get my structures, yes, we use Carol Gobb's series of books, so that's where I get the structures. Otherwise, you can get them from your curriculum or your textbook that you have to use. It's usually dictated to you in some format with your school district. If you have complete flexibility, then just pick the high frequency structures for that particular language. Yes, Emily, I do songs. I do a few games. All those extra things that aren't specifically TPRS, those I still do during that powerful PQA to break it up. I just replaced the TPRS things with powerful PQA at the beginning of the year. Okay, so that's our 5-day lesson plan for those who have regular schedules. For those of us who have standard block schedule, that's the A schedule. This is the lesson plan for you. We're going to something similar to this. This year we were on a partial block last year. This year we're going to an A, B, and then C is a traditional day, which is our Friday. But here's on a 3-day basis, an A day, how you work it. On day 1 with your students, because usually on a block, on average, you meet with your kids 3 days, 1 week, then 2 days, the next week, then 3 days. So we're working in a 3-day cycle here. Julie, I'll get to you in just one moment. And Isabel, I'll get to that question too. I got a couple questions here. Let me get through this day 1 and I'll answer your questions just a moment here. For those on the block, the day 1, we're going to do our weekend talk, our song close activity, kindergarten day, TPRS step 1, gestures and PQA, and TPRS step 2, asking a story, remembering that you need at least 30 minutes to ask a story, and you may have to put in those 5-minute game breaks in between for some of these. These are a lot of activities to do, even in an hour and a half. It's a lot of activities, so they usually don't get too bored, but if you see your kids getting a little bored, they're getting a little antsy, a quick brain break game activity would be perfect there. And let me catch up here on the questions here. Kathy, what grades do you teach? I teach high school, and I've taught levels 1, 2, 3, and native speakers 1, 2, and 3. Michelle asks, you do the novel once a week as opposed to just doing a novel for 2 weeks. I go back and forth, Michelle, on that. Usually I don't have the patience to go once a week and read it for a whole semester, because that's about how long it takes if you do it once a week. I get bored, kids get bored. But lately, the way we've been doing it, because I'm working in a team, that's the way they want to do it. In the past, which has worked better for me, and Susan Gross does it this way as well, is we just take 2 weeks, we stop doing TPRS for a moment, and we get through the book as quickly as possible in those 2 weeks, and then we go back. And the best way I found to do that is on vacation weeks. The week before a vacation and the week after a vacation, when their brains are already fried, is a good time to do the novel if you're going to do it all in one in a 2-week block like that. So you've got the 5 days before Thanksgiving break, the 5 days after Thanksgiving break, the 5 days before winter break, the 5 days after winter break, 5 days before spring break, 5 days after spring break are great times to do those if you're going to concentrate them all into a 2-week packed week. Isabel asks, how long do you stay with Powerful PQA? Until I do all my kids. The first few weeks that I do Powerful PQA in the beginning of the year, especially with level 1, I have to get to every kid. It's going to take me about 4 to 6 weeks, so I have to push it through. If I'm doing it in level 2s, level 3, or level 4, it's about 2 weeks that I'm spending on it. When do you start doing TPRS for Spanish 1? As soon as I get through all my kids with Powerful PQA. Once I've done that, then I go through a cycle of Powerful PQA, TPR, TPRS. Go back to Powerful PQA, TPR, TPRS, and I kind of work my way through that cycle throughout the year. Emily, do you test them on the content and plot of the novel? No, I do not. I test them on the culture of the novel and any structures or vocab that were highly frequent in the novel. But I really don't care if they understand the plot. I'm not an English class. The novel is just a method for me to teach the language in an interesting way. Unlike we're in an English class, the object, they already know the language, they're trying to teach the actual novel. And Julie says, we do TPRS with novela because we are trying to teach the structures backwards planning. That's perfect. If you want to start with the novel and teach it, doing it that way to get your structures, that's a perfect way to do it. I have no objections with that. It's a great way. Backwards planning is always the best way to go. Okay, day 2 on the block. Silent sustained reading again. We do our quick quiz. We sing and gesture our songs. We do our timed writing. And then we're spending a good 30 minutes or so on our read and discuss. And then we can finish up with the game. And then on day 3 of the 3-day cycle for a block, again, we're doing a sustained silent reading. We've got song competition. We're going to bring out our novel. We're going to do our story strip. And we can either do a reflection or do another weekend talk for the weekend coming up. Okay, perfect. We just finished everything up here. Let me go to our questions and answers. I think I must have missed someone. Can you address my previous question? Which question? I must have missed it, Julie. Is it the one, when do I start doing TPRS for Spanish 1? Okay, I answered it, must just answer it real quick here. I don't have a precise time when I start TPRS for Spanish 1. It depends how many kids I have in my class. I usually have 40 to 45 kids in my class, and I have to get through every single kid doing Powerful PQA. So I do 2 kids a day. So it's going to take me 4 to 6 weeks to get through all of those kids. So if I have only 30 kids that year, then that's going to come up earlier. If I have 50 kids, which is possible this year because they are increasing class sizes, they don't want to hire any more teachers. So It could be possible that I could get 50 kids in the classroom. It's going to take me longer. It may take me 7 or 8 weeks to get through all those kids. But I have to get through all those kids in a level 1 class with powerful PQA before I can go into TPRS. So there's not a set answer. It depends on how many kids I have in my class and how long it takes me to get through them all. But generally, it's 4 to 6 weeks that I spend in powerful PQA. And then I do about a week of TPR, and then I go into TPRS. Yes, Teresita, yes, you never want to complain. In Vegas, the average used to be 40 to 45. Last year, the average went up to 50, and they said, hold on to your hats. Some classes are going to have 60 in the classroom this year. They stopped hiring teachers a couple years ago, and Vegas is growing. So don't have enough schools, and they just keep cramming the kids in there. The largest I've ever had in a class was 47. So I've kind of been lucky. But in our new school, we were only supposed to have 20 to 25, and that's what most teachers had last year, except for the Spanish department. We had about 30 to 35 in a class with a classroom that was only built to hold 20. So it is a lot. Yes, it is a lot of kids. Okay, we've already kind of gone over a half an hour, but I want to answer all your questions. So if you have any further questions, feel free to ask me. Yes, but when you add up all my kids, when I have 8 classes of 40 kids, now do the math. Gets up to be a lot of kids total. Okay, Michelle, let's see. Kathy asked questions. Are all of your webinars appropriate for teaching elementary Spanish, or are there some best for elementary level? A lot of the techniques that I use are general good practice techniques, but I've never taught elementary, so I don't have any personal experience with elementary. I can tell you how I would think to adapt it to an elementary school situation, but I'm not speaking from any experience here. Carol Gobb has taught elementary, and she's the expert in the TPRS field for elementary school kids. So that's where I would direct you mostly, but a lot of the stuff I do is just general good practice, so it can be used at any particular level. Bonnie says, my classes range from 28 to 39 minutes a day. Suggestions on how to make this work in inconsistent schedules. All I can say is that you're going to have to look at all these activities and pick which ones you can do and vary it up. So if you do weekend talk this week, don't do it next week, do something else. And so that you have your meat of your lessons, your TPRS portions there. Those are given week after week after week. But the stuff to put the spice on the life, do that stuff and switch it up each week. You guys are typing too fast. I'm not catching up here. Michelle says, I have been presenting songs that I do on Wednesday, Thursday, since we have a modified block schedule. Do you do the song on Monday for a reason? I want to spend about 3 weeks on a song, so I start and want to give a full week to the song. That's why I start on a Monday. So we do generally, most songs are about 3 weeks I spend on them. So I want to start right away on that Monday and do it. It doesn't really matter, but that's the way that I do it. That's why I started on Monday. Bobby, if you can't hear, log out and log back in. That might help. Julie, how do you keep them engaged for 6 weeks of just doing PQA? I'm talking about them and their lives. Teenagers are all about themselves, so I usually don't have a problem talking about that at all for that time. And it's different each day because I'm only talking with 2 kids about 2 different topics. So it's different each day, and it is PQA. It's just comprehensible input. And as long as you make it interesting by asking interesting questions and getting interesting answers from your kids, they should be just fine and engaged. Kelly says, I do block and usually play a song when they enter Monday. Actually do the close on Tuesday. Yep, that's another variation. You can do that. I'll get you 1 second here, Aaron. That's perfect. You can do it that way. I like to just do the close activity on Monday because I want them to sing the song on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, etc. And go ahead and, was it Aaron? I think it was Aaron. I can't remember who raised their hand.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is. Aaron,
The
go ahead and
question
push the talk
earlier
button
with
and ask your question.
the gestures, I meant to ask, do they come in with their gestures ready for the song, or do they create them in class? Okay, thanks.
We create them in class. You're welcome. Okay. Yeah, Michelle, that's what I had last year, was only 2 block days, Wednesday and Thursday. And we did a modified version. It was pretty much the 5-day plan is what we did. I just took out one of the sustained silent reading days. Okay, Carrie asked a question. What would a 4 and 5 day look like with a block schedule only meeting half the year for a full year's worth of content? Okay, let me try to understand because I'm not sure what that is. So you're meeting with your kids every day, but for about an hour and a half block schedule for a semester, which is supposed to count for a year. Am I understanding that correctly? You're welcome, Kathy. You can watch the video and catch up the last few minutes, the last questions that are coming up. Okay. What I would still do would follow that 3-day schedule with the block, and it just repeats. So Monday you do day one, Tuesday you do day 2, Wednesday you do day 3, then Thursday you go back to day 1, Friday's day 2, Monday's day 3, and then Tuesday starts day 1, and just keep that cycle going. That's how I would do that. Teresita, I can't explain Powerful PQA in really quickly. That was a whole 2-hour webinar yesterday. Look for it. I'll do it again. It's a popular one. Julie asks, about how many minutes are you spending on this beginning Powerful PQA and then switching to other activities? It's the bulk of my lesson. So if I'm on an hour period of 45 to 60 minutes, I'm spending 30 to 35 minutes on Powerful PQA. If I'm on a block schedule, I'm probably spending an hour on Powerful PQA and then a half an hour on those other activities. Kelly agrees with me on how to do the block there. Inbal asks, where can we watch the video again? I'll be sending out a follow-up link to all the people who registered, and there will be a link there to be able to see the video all over again. Lauren asks, is Powerful PQA the same as the August 20th webinar? No, it's the one we did yesterday, August 16th. We just did the Powerful PQA one. Yes, Maria, I'll be sending it to everybody. So getting a follow-up email. Okay, Kim has a completely different situation. She only gets 2 classes per week with her kids. Kim, what level do you teach? What age level? Okay, so you're teaching middle school. Are they getting high school credit for that level 1? Okay, so then it's not really to worry. What I would do is just kind of work on, take that 5-day lesson plan and stretch it out. It's going to take you weeks to complete it. So on your first day, you'll do the Monday. On your second day, you'll do the Tuesday. Then the next time you see them, you'll do the Wednesday, and then you'll do the Thursday. And the next time you see them again, you do the Friday, and you keep repeating that cycle. Since you don't really have to cover a high school curriculum in that period of time, then it doesn't really matter how far you get. As long as you're giving them comprehensible input, they're acquiring the language, they're good to go. Julie asked, during the first 6 weeks or so, do you do the weekend talk and the silent reading? I absolutely do. I don't do the weekend talk the first week. I start with the second week, but we do sustained silent reading that first week of school. I tell them just to look at the pictures, look at the words, and see if they can make any connections until they can start understanding more. Yes, Teresita, it does take weeks for them to do that, and it's difficult for them to retain. Unfortunately, the way your school district has set up the system, it's really not conducive to learning a foreign language. Um, Ask them, what, I mean, I'm not sure why they have it set up that way. I'm sure they have a very good reason. Um, but I would quote, if I had the opportunity, I would explain to them that's like telling them they can only have math twice a week and they had to learn the same curriculum. So for whatever reason, um, as usual, like in most schools, foreign language is put to the back burner, and you have to work within what you have to work with. There's no real easy answer to that. If you keep it repetitive, keep it really reduced in vocabulary and structures, don't try to expand too much, it's doable, but it is a bad situation no matter which way you look at it. Julie, can you give us a quick rundown of what a Monday through Friday would look like during the first 6 weeks for single day classes, not double block? Carrie, I haven't scheduled one yet. I'm sure it'll probably be in September will be the next one. I've got pretty much all the webinars booked up for the rest of August, and I start school next week. Okay, Julie, for the schedule again, the only difference is in the handouts, it gives you that complete 5-day schedule. The only difference for powerful PQA would be take out step 1, step 2, step 3, the novel reading, and the story strip. Take those 5 things out of the lesson plan and replace them with powerful PQA. Everything else stays the same. It's just that those 5 things are taken out. Oh, and one other thing, I don't do timed writings in the first quarter of school. So the timed writings will also go out. But every other thing that's there stays the same. The meat of the lesson, step 1, the PQA and gestures. Step 2, asking a story. Step 3, the extended reading. Step 3, the novel, and then the story strip. Those 5 activities would be replaced with powerful PQA. Everything else stays the same. You should be able to watch the video, Isabel, with just a dial-up. It's like a YouTube video. It'll be slower, but it should work for you. The best bet though is to have a broadband connection if you can get one. Yes, Carrie, you can on the store.teachforjune.com. There is a way to purchase previously recorded webinars. So you can go to store.teachforjune.com and purchase those. Great, I'm glad I could help you, Bobby. Angela says, are the Webversity episodes on particular topics basically equivalent to the specified webinars, for example, powerful PQA, homework, culture pop-ups? Not necessarily. The Webversity, Angela, is a whole different concept. There are 2 tracks. One is TPRS and one is grading using standards-based grading techniques. And what it is just like a university course where we're taking it over a longer period of time and you're learning one technique at a time, going back to your classroom and practicing it. And we come back, we discuss it, how it went for you, what we can do to improve it, and then we work on the next skill. So it is slightly different and the topics are not the exact same as what we're happening here. Good luck, Muriel. Starting tomorrow. I don't envy you at all. If I missed anything. What does your first day look like for Spanish 1? Sorry to be redundant. It's my powerful PQA. Watch the webinar that's pre-recorded or sign up for the future one. It's going to come up in September. That's what I started on my very first day, is the powerful PQA. I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Emily. Okay, Ben, I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, I'm sorry, Lauren. You've already had your kids for a week and a half, but you get out earlier than the rest of us. So everybody's got a price to pay, I guess. You're so welcome, Carrie. Let me see, Angela. I sent a message to the site earlier about registering, for example, for both Essentials Webversity and the Meaningful Homework. So it won't be too redundant to go to the webinar. No, they're not the same thing at all. De nada, Dick. Okay. You're all welcome. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and send up a follow-up email. It'll have the link to the recording. It'll have a link to the Vimeo demos for you if you missed it. And hope everything works out well for you guys. Thanks for participating. Oh, Angela's got another question. It prompts me to use a coupon for Webversity, but then it says it actually can't. There are no coupons for the Webversity. There's only 3 ways to pay. You can pay all at once. That gives you a 20% discount right now above what we normally charge for that. You can pay on a monthly basis, or you can do it per episode, and it's $40 per episode. They're a little bit different than these are set up. They're with discussion times, and there's a forum that goes with it. It's much more like a university class. So you have those 3 ways. There are no actual coupons that you can use for it. There's no, to get the early bird special, you just have to click that choice. It doesn't, there's no coupon that goes with it. You're welcome, Katie. The early bird special already has the price reduction built in. There's no special coupon that you have to do. Just leave the coupon section blank. That early bird special already takes the discount. If you click it, there's another choice called the general price, and that's what the price was before the discount was applied. No problem. You're welcome, Angela. You're welcome, Carol. Yes, Kelly, I have everything that I own on my lanyard. That's true. I never have to worry about where I left it. Bobby, probably not, because of I don't want to make that publicly. The only way I can do that is to make it publicly accessible. And the problem is there are kids involved there, so I don't want to keep that open to make it publicly accessible to the general public to see it. So I'll probably be locking it down after in about a week or so. Thanks. I'll tell the kids when they come back next year. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and leave you. I'll go ahead and send everybody the links, and we are done for today.